I'm gonna try and pat this down, and then we're gonna put it back in the machine. Here we go, 1, 2, 3. Well, there it is! It's not about what you do, it's about how you do it. Or is it? We're gonna be talking about all that and more, but first, an unboxing. So ladies and gentlemen, I have decided to chart my new journey, starting in the world of espresso. Now, this is a series called While I'm Making Coffee, and I've been doing this series for, I think there's like 40 or 50 episodes of this, talking about anything from video games to art to recent things that have been happening. But usually I use what's known as drip coffee or pour over coffee, and I'll grind the beans. We like to say, let's grind, but I don't have all the stuff that I require for an espresso setup. All I've got right now is this machine, and I basically went on YouTube, I just typed in espresso machine, what's cheap, and this is the one that came up. So this is what we're going to be unboxing today. Honestly speaking, I don't know if this is the machine I'm going to continue using for this series while I'm making coffee, but I just think it would be kind of interesting to get into the world of espresso because I'm really interested, as you know, not just in games and playing games and getting better at games, but I'm actually more interested in the technical aspect of the tools that are required to interface with games. And as a result, it means that I don't really progress at video games competitively, maybe as quickly as other people do, because I'm very busy just thinking about all the parts that are inside an arcade stick. That's the sort of person who gets too busy playing with the hardware and not spending much time actually improving at the game. But that's the reason why I'm playing it. Like, I enjoy playing fighting games because I enjoy owning this hardware and interfacing with the hardware and taking care of the hardware. And generally, just the way that you use stuff is more interesting to me than ultimately what the stuff is being used for. So let's go ahead and get this thing out of the box. The truth is, I actually wanted one of those Nespresso style machines, or I mean K-cup machines. If you just really need a quick coffee, maybe that's convenient, but then you have to go and get those special K-cups and find a shop that actually sells the ones that are compatible with your coffee machine. And also, I just like the idea of understanding a new process, because that's what was really exciting to me when I got into drip coffee. I was just like, I knew nothing about drip coffee, and I was not obsessed with the concept of drip coffee, but once I started doing it, I was like, this is really fun. Like, it wasn't even really for me about the flavor. For most people, it's about getting a good tasting coffee. For me, it's just like, it's just fun. It's just fun to do the whole process, and for me, it becomes like a ritual. And once I'm in the mindset of I'm making coffee now, then all the moving parts in my brain actually the cogwheels start to go. So there's an instruction manual. Don't need that. This is a bad idea. Turn your coffee machine upside down to get it out. Ooh, I love stuff with a chrome kind of finish. That's fancy. I'm sure that this is like one of the cheapest espresso machines that you can get, but for me, this is kind of fancy. It's just like, ooh, it's weighty. Let's open up the machine itself. Check this out. Ooh. So this is the machine. I think you're going to open this up, put water on the inside of this machine. Then you're going to turn it on, the coffee's going to come out here. I'm actually going to put it over here where you can see it now. There you go. What do you think of that? That's fancy. Wow! It looks like you have to run some water through this thing first. I grabbed some espresso grounds from a shop nearby, so I'm going to be using this. I don't have my own grinder, so we're going to have to do the traditional let's grind in a separate episode, because this time we're just going to be using straight up pre-ground espresso from a little shop down the road. So I have washed the machine, and I have to admit it was a slightly more involved process than I was expecting, which is actually quite cool. Okay, so let's plug this in. Just pull this out. You can see there is a pitcher, and we're going to fill this with water. Again, this is all very much the very first time I've ever done this, and so if I make any mistakes, that's kind of the point. I just want to chart my journey through this, and then I'll stick this back into the machine. And the next thing that I want to do is actually want to heat up my cup. So I don't have any special espresso cups, but I do have this Yanaka coffee cup that I've been using for coffee videos for years now, and it looks kind of espresso sort of size, so I actually just use this for small coffees, but If I fill this about halfway, I think it'll make a sort of espresso size. Let's turn this here. Whoa, the whole machine is shaking. The machine is hot, and I believe this water is also hot. And now what we need to do is make an espresso. We're going to spoon this into the machine. So let's see if we can get this right. Correct pressing of the pre-ground coffee is essential to obtain a good espresso. If pressing is excessive, coffee delivery will be slow and the crema will be dark. If pressing is too light, coffee delivery will be too rapid, and the crema will be skimpy and light-colored. Man, how am I supposed to know how much to do it? This is 100% the whole point of getting this machine. It's like, if it were all automatic, it would be missing the point for me. Doing this and understanding that if I push it too hard or too light and just getting it to just the amount that I want it personally is the whole point of this, and this is why this is so exciting. Are we supposed to have like exactly 6 grams? This seems like a lot of coffee, dude. There's way too much coffee here. Oh, this is about 7 grams, it says. And so if we don't fill it entirely full the next time, maybe we make about 5 grams and add this. This should be just about right. Okay, this is so messy. I'm gonna try and pat this down in here. Oh, what a mess. And then we're gonna put it back in the machine. All right, and now is the moment of truth. Are you ready for the world's first NihongoGamer espresso? Here we go, 1, 2, 3. Well, there it is. There you go. That is the coffee done. Let's have a look at our freshly brewed coffee. Can't see how much of that is froth, but we're now going to taste it. Oh, wow. Okay, I feel like I've dug a trench through like soil in a forest just after it's rained. That is not bad. That is not bad at all. Well, that's very exciting. And if you want to see what the coffee looks like now, this is the state of the coffee after I've drunk a little bit of it. It tastes pretty darn good, actually. Espresso is it is a wild drink. This is definitely not a drip coffee. Wow. So going back to the original question that I posed at the start of this video, let's say question. Is it really about what you do? Or is it about how you do it? Everyone is different. What people want to achieve, a lot of people don't really care how they do it. It really matters more what gets done at the end. Maybe they've got to produce a certain amount of a product or something. But for me, especially because I grew up studying music and my main goal was to like be a composer, I found that if you focus on the process, then you sort of invariably end up with a product which is way beyond what you could have wanted to make. I found that going through a process that was more interesting led me to a piece of music that I could never have conceived myself from the start. I felt like if I had enough humility to respect that you can't always conceive of the perfect product in the planning stage, if you focus also on the process, then you can like leave it to the art, leave it to yourself, kind of have faith in your own abilities to reach something at the end, which is way beyond what you could have conceived like in the planning stage on paper. But that's actually not the reason why I made this video. The reason I'm making this video is because I found that while making this channel, just personally, the things that I naturally gravitate towards, arcade sticks, video games, language, music, art, all of these things, like I'm not interested in being the best person who's drawn this thing or being the strongest tournament player in a fighting game or anything. For me, it's much more interesting to like buy a number of controllers, play around with the parts on the inside, see what it's like to play with different parts and how that affects me as a player and my enjoyment of the game, and also as a fringe benefit, if I find the right parts that also offer a competitive advantage, or I say competitive advantage, they make it easier for me to reach my competitive potential, then that's also part of it, and I find that really interesting. But for me, really, I feel like I gravitate towards things that have that depth. Like, for example, there's a large number of video games that only require the use of a pad controller. And of course, this is actually quite a complex tool as well. And you see the way people like have invented new grips so that they can press analog sticks and buttons at the same time with all their fingers. And they've got these like, what do they call it? Like the claw grip and all that. I think it is quite interesting, but that's not the personal aspect that I find the most interesting. For me, it's looking at a certain thing, like this is fighting games, and to play fighting games, you can use a pad or an arcade stick or one of these button box controllers, and if you go down the arcade stick route, then there's all of the tinkering, the modifications, the DIY aspect, the fact that you could just share your designs with other people, you can find other people's designs, and you can talk and you can connect to people about it. It's just, when you like just see it from the outside before you've even got into fighting games, then when you look at the arcade stick, it's like, I see a world of depth. I see the massive rabbit hole, and I know that I could go down it, and that fills me with confidence right at the start when I'm choosing my hobby, because I'm like, yeah, I could totally get into that. And the same thing happens with things like cycling, like my Brompton bicycle. Like, it's not just a bike. And of course, even if you get into just simple cycling, there's plenty that you can do with just a normal bike. But if you get into folding bikes, and if you get into Brompton folding bikes, then there's all sorts of exciting stuff that you can get into. For example, customizing the build when you first buy it. Do you want the standard Brompton, or do you want the Brompton that's made of like carbon fiber, which is a little bit lighter, but not significantly lighter, but it does cost significantly more? Or do you want the electric Brompton? Do you want the Brompton with the leather handles? Do you want, there's 3 different models. There's Bromptons, which are like higher up so that you can sit in a more Schwinn type riding position, or do you want the one that has special tires that are, the tires that have better protection against getting punctured? Or do you want the Brompton with a rear carrier? Or do you want the Brompton that has a certain type of color? Or do you want the older Bromptons that had a different type of clasp on the screws that you use to tighten the bolts and all that? Standing at the gate, looking at the world of bicycles, I'm like, okay, here are the standard bicycles that just get you from point A to point B, and you can tinker with them, and it's kind of interesting. But if you go down this road, the one with the folding bicycles, ones that are a little bit more expensive but offer a massive, deep world of customization and optimization, that's what gets me really excited when it comes to, I guess, things like content creation as well. If I'm looking at a topic like the designing, like reviewing laptops is kind of fun because you can do a lot of really fun stuff with laptops, but there's not as much customization when it comes to the hardware aspect of laptops. But if you're going into making a tower PC channel, then wow, there is so much customization, because you can go into like small tower PCs, large tower PCs, gaming tower PCs, PCs that are small and portable, or PCs that have lights on the inside, or PCs that have water cooling, liquid cooling, you know what I mean? Just standing at the gate when I'm looking in, that's the sort of thing that I'm looking for. I'm like, okay, well, this is a cool game, and if you worked really, really hard, you could probably be the best in it. But like, what else could you do to customize? And the thing is, actually, one major point that I want to talk about with customization is that I'm not just into anything that can be customized. I'm not into arcade sticks because you can customize every aspect of it. You can change the ball top, you can change the buttons, you can change the art that's on the top of it, you could change the case that it's in, you can make a smaller case or a larger case, or you could make it wireless. There are all sorts of things that you could do to just purely customize for the sake of customization, but that's not really what I'm into customization for. What really excites me is a product that leans towards a certain way of wanting to be used. As in, there is a way that it is supposed to be used. So for example, if I were to go into like fashion design, I would really enjoy the idea of making clothes, because clothes are not just something that are purely customizable, and you can just have feathers coming off in any place that you want, and you can just have lights and music and smart things built into it. Like if you wanted, you could make anything, you could make any kind of design that came to mind, but that wouldn't be the exciting part for me. What would be exciting for me entering the world of fashion would be that clothing is also functional. It has a function, it has a way that it wants to be used, and that restriction is where the creativity becomes interesting. It's just like, okay, we're going to make a smart jacket, but how are we going to make it actually usable? When you think about the fact like, okay, I'm going to open it up to my computer, but it's just like every time I open up my jacket to use my computer, I'm going to feel a bit cold. The same thing goes with music. The same thing goes with arcade sticks, and the same thing goes with coffee. Like, really, you could make coffee any way you want, and it's completely customizable. You could make an ultra bitter coffee, or you could make an ultra sweet coffee, or you could make an ultra strong coffee, or an ultra weak coffee, or you could make a coffee that's really large, or a coffee that's really small, or you can have a coffee that has tons of froth on top, or a coffee that's filled with milk, or a coffee that's like, I don't know, 10% milk and 90% coffee. Who knows? There's just so many things that you could do, but it's not fun because you're just doing it for the sake of it. It's fun because there is a goal in mind, and the goal is to make, one, a delicious product, and two, often make a delicious product for someone else. And I feel like that's where the art of being a barista comes in. Like, yeah, you could be a barista just to make nice coffee at home, but I feel like the term, and again, like I've never done any studying of coffee or anything, but like when you go to a coffee shop, it says barista on the back of their t-shirt, right? It's like, these are people who are designed to make coffee for customers, kind of customize the coffee so that it works best for them. Choose a cup that looks best for them. Have you seen, there's a documentary about coffee. I can't remember if it was on Amazon Prime or if it was on Netflix, but they interviewed this dude in Tokyo, in Japan. He's like the oldest coffee shop, one of the most famous coffee shops in Japan. And for him, it clearly is not about choosing the most expensive components or choosing the highest quality coffee from the rarest regions in the world. For him, it is purely about that process. He's like, he can make you a Guatemala, or he can make you, I don't know, a Brazil, or he can make you a blended coffee. What's more important for him is the process, the way that it is done, the ritualistic aspect. Clearly, he's like going into this trance as he's making it. He's like preparing the filter, grinding the coffee, measuring exactly the right weight. And then what really got to me in that documentary is the bit where he chooses a cup to match the customer. Because again, maybe a lot of coffee shops don't even talk about this, but I think a lot of them probably also do this. And like when you think back on it, going back to a number of coffee shops that you've been to, and you're like, well, yeah, they gave me this random mug. It's like, did they actually give you a random mug? Maybe they chose that mug because they thought this is the mug that's going to suit you. And I think there's probably an art to it. Like you can kind of see whether a person wants a thick mug like this, or do they want one of those like thin, fine bone China mugs, which is actually, I tend to enjoy drinking coffee from a thin, fine bone China mug. Actually, I really like drinking from this cup, but it is really, really thick. I kind of wish that I had a cup of this size that was a little bit thinner, but I guess the risk is that for a coffee this small, maybe it would lose heat faster. I think when it comes down to it, what I really enjoy about making coffee or tinkering with arcade sticks or writing music or drawing is that I'm not interested in full 100% free reign. I just get lost and it's not very interesting to me. But when there are things like an arcade stick, which has a way that it wants to be used to get competitive advantage when you're playing in a tournament, then when you're modifying the stick, you're modifying around that task, making sure that the main task is not interrupted by all the stuff that you're adding to it. Just like, okay, you're adding bells and whistles, but are the bells and whistles going to slow down the car? That's kind of what I'm thinking. And with coffee, it's like there's so much customization, especially with these espresso machines. You're choosing how hard you're pushing the grinds into this thing here, or how much coffee that you're putting in, or from the very start, are you making a small coffee or are you making a large coffee? And what kind of beans are you choosing to grind to put in there? Are you using your own grinder? Are you using an electric grinder? Are you grinding it by hand? There's just so much that you could do. And if you wanted, you could think of it as completely free reign. But what draws me to it is that it's a culture that has already been going for a very long time, since before I've come to it. Where coffee started, where it wants to go naturally, and then where I'm going to end up. Like this triangle here, this is kind of where I live. This is where I get my kicks. And it's only possible because it is an art form, I guess, that has a way that it wants to be. It has a way, it has a culture behind it and a direction where it is already being propelled, you know, a momentum sending it in this direction. And what I do with it is relative to where it wants to go as a scene, as a culture around the world. And it's that tension between where I want to be and where it wants to be on its own. Because if it didn't have a natural direction that it wanted to go, then it wouldn't be interesting. It would just be me in a room mucking about with some stuff, being creative. And I don't find that that is, for me, like the fun of being creative. For me, it's knowing how far away I'm tugging away from the natural line that it wants to race down. Thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you're going to stick around for more coffee videos like this. Usually we spend time talking about video games, things that have happened lately in the fighting game scene, or whether we talk about drawing or just stuff that's happening on YouTube. I'm going to be branching out into lots of more topics in this series while I'm making coffee. And now I think it would be fun to incorporate more of this machine, this espresso machine, so that we're doing espresso coffee making. So I guess, I don't know, cappuccinos and flat whites and stuff like that, in addition to what we normally make here, which is drip coffee, or what's also known as pour over coffee. For me, getting into the mindset, you know, there are much more convenient machines out there for making coffee, but for me, it's these machines that allow you to go through a process and fall into a ritual and get your mind into a specific place. And that is the soup. When you've got all the elements ready in the soup, you put them all into the pot, and then suddenly your brain is able to do the thinking and do the talking and do all of the things that you were hoping to do. And that's kind of what this series is. It's just getting myself in the right place to make the thing that I want to make. And I can't do it if I'm not in the right place. Well, I guess I could do it, but it would be the result would be different, and I wouldn't be interested in that result. So do subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Maybe this is the first time you've been here, or maybe you've been watching the While I've Been Making Coffee series for a long time. Are you excited about this new road, this new fork in the road for my coffee making journey? I'm really excited. Let me know what kind of coffees you'd like me to try making in future videos. And if you're not already a member of the Discord, sometimes we talk about gear, arcade sticks, fighting games, and coffee in the Discord, so there's a link down below. And until the next NihongoGamer video, I'll see you around.